Dar, as you know, in our book, Extinction Dialogues, How to Live with Death in Mind, Guy McPherson and I talked about planetary hospice and the possibility that we've been admitted to it whether or not we realize that fact. I'd like you to talk about this kind of soul-searching and how we might live in the limited time we have left.
I agree with what you and Guy wrote about that idea of us having entered into that phase and feel that way myself, and kind of briefly touched on that subject earlier, talking about the need to, I think, get out into nature as often as possible in whatever capacity it is that we enjoy it the most, of getting out, appreciating what's there while it's still there, whether it's nature or wild streams and lakes or things like that, where, just getting out and really appreciating it and being out in it. And I think that's also a really, really helpful way for us to process feelings that come up around that, is really getting out and appreciating the grandeur and majesty of nature, as well as giving ourselves a chance to kind of breathe, because I think living amidst all the distractions of mainstream society today make it almost impossible to really be real about what's happening and have our feelings. And I think, obviously, time out in nature is where we can find solace, where we can recharge, and as well as really process through a lot of the feelings that come up around the fact that, like for me personally, I just got back from a trip in Alaska and did a hike out towards a glacier and went up to the toe with a friend, a local who'd been living there for several years, and looking at this big lake at the terminus of the glacier. And he said, last year that was 10 feet thick of just solid ice, the toe of the glacier literally coming all the way down, and now, it's a big lake that you would literally need a boat to go out into, and it's just things are melting and changing that fast. And so I think it's also important to get out and see with our own eyes what's happening. And, you don't have to even go too far to really see, whether it's if you live in Southern California or even, all of California at this point, and to see the drought firsthand, other places around the country, other evidence of rivers that don't even reach the lakes or the oceans that they used to drain into anymore, or something as dramatic as glaciers melting. So I think that's another aspect of it. That it's really, our processing of what's happening is kind of helped along when we go out there and see it firsthand and can actually be with it.
Yeah, and for me, I don't just go out there to see the devastation, although I think that's really important. But I go out just to, I've been talking lately about this developing earth intimacy and developing this kind of sensuous relationship with the earth, and what that does for me is help me feel the way I am the earth, that I'm not separate from it. And so I'm kind of curious, what do you experience when you go out into nature, besides seeing the devastation? What's it like for you?
Well, for me, most of the time I go out now, it's to climb mountains, and which always, of course, involves backpacking and camping as well, and oftentimes covering large distances. And, it's really, literally, almost as an aside from what we're talking about, it's a way that I recharge my batteries, and it fills me back up. And, I spend all week in front of a computer writing usually about really, really devastating and emotionally difficult stories about how fast this is happening to the planet, and, species die-offs and more extinctions and, vanishing glaciers. And, this stuff's really, really challenging to take in. And so I think I'm able to keep doing it consistently, helped in large part by going out every weekend, usually with friends, going up to places where, for me personally, mountains are like my church, and just getting filled back up, and appreciating the perspective that I get from being in nature about my real insignificance, in terms of the planet, that, we, in the grand scheme of things, we are, in no way, shape, or form the primary species on the planet. I don't believe that idea that we're at the top of the food chain or any of that. And I think that that, you can't help but be reminded of that when you go out and try to climb a big mountain, or, something happens in the wilderness and you have to deal with it if it's an emergency situation, and just, going out there also for humility, and the humility that comes and being in that kind of majesty and that kind of power, and really, kind of realizing our right place in the world, as opposed to, mainstream society has us, well, we're the apex, we're the top of the food chain, we're going to find some technological fix and get our way out of this, and all of that. So it's another way where I get perspective, but also to, recharge my batteries, and again, just really, really appreciate, how amazing this planet really is.